Welcome to Foundations. We're the marriage architects, Marc and Heather. And whether you're newlyweds or celebrating decades together, we know there are still paths to discovering new dreams, vision, and purpose for your marriage. We can build a marriage blueprint for you. Just go to foundationsquiz.com or click the link in the show notes labeled quiz. God has incredible plans for your marriage. Join us today. Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Marriage Architects Heal Your Christian Marriage. And whether your marriage needs healing or just some strengthening, we're going to talk about one of our favorite topics, and that is strength finders. Strengthening your relationship through increased self-awareness, increased other awareness. It's not just about yourself, but it is about your spouse and your relationship and building trust and security. That leads into intimacy. And that is the foundation that the Marriage Architects consistently talks about, is building your house upon a solid foundation. Matthew 7:24. It's why Marc and I are here today. And I just want to welcome you along with us to grab a pen and paper, maybe, and write down a few things, because we're talking about something. We're continuing the conversation from last week about nature, how you're wired, what is your DNA wiring that God formed you in your mother's womb, your core nature, which we say we're going to talk about personality, different traits that make up who you are, and then how it was shaped, nurture, what is your story? Marc shared a little bit, if you haven't listened to that last week, about his story and his family growing up and how he got called out in college when we were doing our own MBTI assessment, and they called Marc in because they saw some red flags there, and it went into nature, nurture, and then it opened up a great possibility, didn't it, Marc? It really was a shift for you back in that college time of learning about your personality.
Yeah, absolutely. It sparked the beginnings of this career and this opportunity to go learn and study more and figure out the different pieces that not only make up other people, but more importantly, I was focused on what makes me tick. And that, like I said, led to a counseling career and one of serving others, and kind of knew that those gifts were there early on and other people had affirmed them, but I, really didn't have an idea of what that meant or looked like. And of course, in college, I think every career choice you're picking at the time, you're going, okay, well, that's fantastic, but what exactly does an accountant do, right? Or what does a counselor do? Took a little while to figure some of those things out, some of those mechanics out. So.
Absolutely. And been a journey, and it's probably been a journey for our listeners, understanding their calling, their gifting, and how those dynamics affect your marriage relationship. Your identity is in Christ Jesus. You are a workmanship. You are a masterpiece. In Greek, it means poema, a poem, a story written. But unless we have access and accessibility to learn, well, what is my personality? How am I hardwired? And we love to help people. There's assessments that we're going to talk about. One that we're going to dive into today is strength finders, and to understand what are my strengths. And Marc's going to talk a little bit more on the specifics of that and how really in business, a lot of times they take assessments to learn for the corporate executives, the higher level, but this doesn't always go to everybody in management. And this is what we want to do today. This is what we want to bring to everybody, all of us, and make it so simple that a 13-year-old can understand it. Because we talked about my granddaughter last week, and maybe our own kids. If you're raising children, you notice there's characteristics, there's traits that they have. But very oftentimes we miss our own characteristics and traits. It's almost like that Don't worry about that splinter or small thing in somebody else's eye because I've got a plank and it is of a lack of self-awareness. And I think of just a plank sticking out of my eye. And if you have a big pole, it can wipe people out as you turn. And that is what a lack of self-awareness, the plank in my own eye, can do to people around me if I don't understand how I'm wired, what my strengths are, even what my weaknesses are, can be used for the glory of God. So, Mark, we get excited about this.
Yeah, because this is such a just a wide open field. String Finders is just one kind of assessment tool that you can use to learn about yourself and grow in the gifts that God has given you, the way he's wired you and created you to be. It's unique, it's by design. And so the more we learn about that and the more we learn how to influence that positively for ourselves, that translates in a great way to your marriage. And when you're both learning about each other, right, you build a better, stronger marriage, you build a better version of you. And then God says, now that you have this knowledge, get out there and use it for my glory, for my kingdom. And we are going to accomplish great things when we have that realization. So this is just one. There's many that are out there, but when you're focused on your strength, I think it can become just so black and white and so such an easy tool to use. That's what I like about Clifton String Finder. I discovered it early on. I think I had just graduated from college and took the assessment and really didn't know what to do with it. And a couple of years later at the bank, they were using it and they just gave it to us to talk about how the team might benefit if we knew what each other's strengths were. And then later on, just after going through grad school, it became kind of a realization, oh, this is a really good tool. It's so user friendly. It's so black and white. Right here, Clifton would say, start with your top five strengths. And here they are. This is how you wake up in the morning. This is how, when you get out of bed, this is the stuff that you're going to kind of be for that day. Mine is, we talked about this in the last podcast, but competition and then woo and then belief. These are Clifton definitions. So if you haven't heard some of these words before, kind of used in that way. So if you're interested in learning more about Strength Finders and everything that we're going to talk about today and doing a deeper dive, you can certainly head to their website. Just look it up on the web. There's also a link in our podcast description that'll get you there as well. You can also go to our website, themarriagearchitects.co, for other resources and information that'll help you understand a little bit more of what Heather and I are doing to help marriages grow and succeed. So again, this is just one tool. And within the Strength Finders description of the 34 strengths that they give, they divide it into these four buckets they call the domains. And they use these for a lot of leadership training, but they're really good, very applicable for marriage. If you look at your top 10, there is a domain theme that you'll fit into, right? Many of your strengths, especially your top five, will usually be in that domain. For me, it's influencing because, and it makes so much sense when you just think about the way,
Mhm.
the way I am and the way I wake up. You're looking at this competitive person. You're thinking about someone that likes people and enjoys working with people. I love to lead. I love to influence people. Another domain that's there is execution. Another one is relationship building. And the last one is strategic thinking. So when we look at us as a group, Heather, I know we hit all four of those domain themes. And it's interesting. It's not like we tried to do that, but that's definitely was there as we kind of discovered and took some of these inventories ourselves. So Elizabeth and I fit into different two different domain themes. She's the executor. So it's great that I have visions and I have dreams and ideas, but Elizabeth is the go-to person that can help our marriage succeed in those and carry those out. For you and John, Heather, I know it's relationship building and strategic thinking. We all know that you're the relationship builder, and
Yes, you too.
that's who that's how you wake up in the morning, and that's great. That's that's a great category to be in. And there's strengths that help you succeed in that every day. And then you've got this strategic thinker, right? This engineer
Mhm.
who is really going to help shape a lot of those relationships and right help bring out the positives as well as the negatives right into those to help really define those and make you a better team player and member of the marriage in that sense. So when you look at these different domains, it's fantastic. It's really fascinating to dive deep into what Clifton has to say about them, and the strengths are there. That's those top 10, how I wake up in the morning, those top 10 define me. I like to look at the ones that aren't, in the top 10. I like to look at that bottom third because I might need to pull something out of there for a specific meeting, or maybe something I'm trying to accomplish, or something I just want to grow into. Strength Finders has all kinds of resources on their website. Once you take these inventories, you'll find all kinds of resources that can specifically dial in to helping me be a better strategic thinker if I wanted to dive into that category. So again, these are all the different ways and the tools that are out there to help you, learn more about yourself, figure out, okay, I know God made me, wired me this certain way, but what am I going to do with that? In Romans, it says, Romans 12, I love this scripture. It says, in his grace, God has given us different gifts for doing certain things well. So if God has given you the ability to prophesy, then speak out with as much faith as God has given you. If your gift is serving others, then serve them well. If you're a teacher, teach them well. And so he goes on in Romans 12 to define some of these gifts and some of these attributes that God's given us. And the bottom line is do it well. Know yourself so that you can do it well. And this is where it begins for a lot of us, knowing ourself.
Well, and when you talked about knowing yourself in leadership, something that I always go back to is I have to get up every morning and I have to lead myself. But I have to know myself to lead myself. And that's leadership starting at ground zero. And why we're taking a whole podcast to talk about personality and wiring and traits is because you as a married couple affect each other. You affect how you're leading yourself, how you're supporting, loving, leading each other well, building that home and the foundation. Also building your children. You might be empty nesters like John and I, but we're also leading with our grandchildren now, the next generation, and we're caretakers, and my parents have passed on. So that was leadership in a whole new way that some of you might be in as you were helping your own parents do that end of life caregiving and executing all of those responsibilities. And when John and I did that in our marriage, these are where knowing yourself to lead yourself, knowing your traits and your personality, your strengths really helps identify, because we had this training, this knowledge of our own traits, our own strengths. We were able to help each other in those really hard, challenging seasons. Now it's a joyful season where we're just reaping the benefits of being grandparents, and knowing these strengths that we each have helps us identify each of our unique contributions. And I want to ask you today, if you're listening to this, do you know what you contribute to your marriage individually? Mark was talking about the spiritual gifts of teaching, prophesy, leading. Those are all part of understanding your personality. Those are all part of understanding the traits that God has wired in you at birth. And some people are introverts, some people are extroverts. For another example, some people are very future mindset. You're always thinking ahead, but it's hard for you to be present. Versus some people are so present that they can't see ahead. That is a stressor for their type of personality to think long term, big picture. These are traits that are hardwired in us. Just to kind of break it down, as we talk about the 34 strength finders and what your list is. Mark, when I look at my list of 34, I can identify that top five and that top 10. And as people go to the website and take this assessment, I'd love to hear their feedback on what you're learning because you might be surprised where you thought you were better at something and you're like, that might be a blind spot. I thought I was better mostly at influencing. That's what you are, Mark. Because I'm an extrovert, I'm a joyful person, I love people. So I thought I had more natural wiring to be that influencer. And it was like an aha moment. And these are the things we want the conversations you and your spouse to have. Take this assessment and have these aha moments and really vulnerable places of conversation with your spouse because it's a beautiful thing when you can say, I thought I was this, but I'm looking at this. Now it's just one assessment. Let's talk that out and why and see those 34, that list of 34, the top, the middle gives us information. That middle section will kind of tell us some areas to identify that could be blind spots. And then that last part, the weakness, the last 10 or so, it's not a weakness that I'm not good. It is a place where you can see God work in your life too. Because when I see that I am handling conflict and I am handling relational issues and conflict with secure, confident, and humble communication, I see the hand of God working in me. And I know that's not me. I know that's just not Heather. I see growth in my life.
Yeah, I think the flip side of the strengths are those weaknesses. And for me, it was that aha moment was more around those because one of my bottom strengths, I think it's number 29, is Clifton would say analytics. So I'm not analytical, which cracks me up every time I hear that because every day and my whole career
Mhm.
depended on analytics. Um,
And what was your career, just in case people are listening to us the first time, for your main career?
yeah, so finance, accounting, banking, all those roles early on, I realized I'm not going to be a CPA and had no intention on really kind of sitting for that test. And so had to scratch the accounting field of that type of analytics, but had to certainly use all of that knowledge and training from my undergraduate and then graduate training as well in the bank. The bank was constantly sending us to school and to learn other types of analytics and how
Was
to.
that life-giving to you, knowing what you know now? How do you see the blend of that financial analytical world and your strengths?
Yeah, I always found it interesting because I loved to get to know and understand things. So I loved the learning aspect of it. So that again was the other strength that was coming through, and especially if it involved people. And of course these always did. The numbers always equated to
Yeah.
a company, which a company was run by people. And that was the strength. That's how I was successful in the sales part because I could take those numbers and goals that the company or the individual, the CEO, CFO
Yeah.
was trying to accomplish. And the bank had products and services that would help fulfill those buckets. And so it worked constantly, but I crack up because it's like, well, I had to have an understanding of those analytics. I had to understand what the
Sure.
numbers were saying. And even today in my own business, use those all
Yes.
the time. But I look at that and go, okay, well, it does make sense because I'm not going to wake up in the paper and the Wall Street Journal is sitting there. I'm not going to go to the section that ranks the the gains and the losses in the stock market.
Mhm.
That's not what I'm going to open up first. I'm going to go for the stories that are about people. Like what did
Mhm.
this CEO just do, or what did this company just accomplish? That's the stuff I'm going to read first. So it makes sense.
Mhm.
When Clifton's kind of putting it together, I can go there, but it might be later in the day, or
Mhm.
maybe last on the list in that sense. So from a strategic thinking standpoint, I get it. And I totally understand that, but it doesn't mean I can't invest
Mhm.
in time, and I still take continuing education classes to stay current in that role, and I'll do Zoom calls and seminars online so that I'm understanding what the current trends are and what things
Yeah.
mean in that sense. At the end of the day, it has to tie in to somebody and someone. There's got to have a person there that's going to benefit from it. Otherwise, what's the interest? I'm not a numbers guy just for the numbers. And there
Mhm.
are people out there that are like that, definitely.
Right. Right. I know if people go and, well, I've been listening to Mark and Heather talk about wisdom and vision and goals, and now they're throwing in this curveball on me personally and my wiring. And yes, we are. That's intentional. And maybe you've done this before, but you weren't ready to really absorb and apply it and have these aha moments where how your behaviors, how your self awareness is affecting those around you, affecting your own mindset, how you're leading yourself and your thinking and your feeling. And then that affects your relationship and your marriage.
And we love talking about Proverbs because it's so practical and there's so many good pieces of advice. And Proverbs 15, 22 says, plans go wrong for lack of advice.
Mhm.
And in many advisors bring success. So I look at strength finders and any inventory like this as an
Mhm.
advisor, right? How can I plan better? When I look at my buckets of different strengths here and those definitions, those all help me plan better for their equipping. They're going to help me get through the day or the week. I would use them knowing I got to go into this meeting and there are personalities in this meeting that are just going to be a challenge to overcome. They always are. They know that I'm the positive kind of let's get things done, let's figure that out. And it's not that they live to challenge me, but they
No,
live to challenge maybe anybody. So, what strengths do I need? And if I don't have the right
right.
balance of that, it could go wrong. So, I look at all these inventories as just another advisor, no different
Mhm.
than calling us up, Heather, and saying, okay, how would you help me get through this situation? When you apply that to the context of a marriage, right, you may
Mhm.
be stuck. You may be at a point in your marriage where you're going, man, how do I navigate this and how do I move through? So again, James, we love James from the wisdom category. James is going to tell you, in 1:5, just ask, right? And Jesus said, ask a ton, ask
Mhm.
abundantly. So start there and then use these tools to help you accomplish that. Use these tools, and there are many of them out there. This is just one of them. We'll talk about some more, but this is just one of those tools that can help you plan accordingly and will advise you to win.
Do you know, I had done marriage counseling and counseling for years, but it wasn't until a leadership development company that I was a consultant with was Giant. And their strength finder assessment was called Five Voices. And I cannot say enough about it. So, like Mark said, there's a lot of resources and tools that are out there for you. We're focusing on strength finders now because we both know a lot about it. Mark's been a consultant with strength finders, and so he really knows a lot. But when a couple would come into my office and they were broken, they weren't talking, where do you start? And a lot of times I would be like, let me just have you take this assessment. And of course, they're like, we've got issues. We're not talking. We're not having connection and relation. We have these problems in our marriage. And I was like, I know, but this is going to help provide a blueprint, as we like to say with marriage architects, that will help us design your house, your foundation, your relationship with knowledge, with information about each of your wiring. And time after time after time, it unlocked an understanding. Oh my gosh, people would just be in awe of themselves. So you think you know yourself. I would like to say you never stop learning. You never stop learning and you never graduate from the school of self awareness because the minute you do is trouble. Just like David, right? He had hit the highest of heights of his career, of his family, and yet he then wasn't diligent and aware of maybe his behaviors and actions, and was easily swayed with whether it was numbers or another woman. These were the things that broke down in
And
his life.
and what did David even say about awareness, right? He said,
Oh,
"Search me, oh God,
yes.
know my heart." Right? That's self-awareness right there.
Yes.
And we love David, and you've
Yes.
listening to us, you've heard us reference David a lot, but it's very true, right? This awareness that Heather is talking about in marriage counseling, and the right awareness. And I'm maybe not going to say this exactly correct how I want to, but the more awareness you have, the more empowered you are.
To
And that,
love and connect.
right. And that becomes a strength.
Hmm.
There's just no way to hide it. So when David says, "Search me, O God, and know my heart, test me," right?
Hmm.
And know my thoughts. I mean, that's our command right there. That's our guidance. Why
Hmm.
would we why would we do anything different for our own marriages and our own lives?
It is liberating to be set free from our own ignorance.
Yep.
It is so liberating. And reading through Psalm 51, David had such blinders on that even when Nathan came to question him about what would you do if there was this in your kingdom, he never owned up to it. He was so, I don't know if he was cold hearted, I don't know where he was, but he was so, number one, detached from truth. He was detached from himself. He was engaged with all these external internal things that he really didn't have that innermost awareness, that self awareness, know yourself to lead yourself, comprehension. And it broke down. It was death to not one, but two people, right? The baby that Bathsheba had died, and her husband was killed in battle. So, lack of self awareness, I would say, can lead to death. And that's a big statement, but oh, save myself, Lord, from myself. Any of the areas that I can grow, and that takes humbling. That takes laying down your pride. A lot of marriage problems come from somebody stuck in pride or a strong will of defiance. And I'm not talking about being a doormat. I'm talking about secure, confident, and humble, Christ like self awareness. Not your self awareness, but Christ like self awareness that brings healing, that brings exposure to your greater need. And it brings an understanding of your wiring and your personality and your traits that equips you with these tools and this strength and this wisdom that you see the hand of God work in your life and your spouse's life and in your relationship.
It helps you build your spouse up. And
Yes.
for I don't know. It took Liz a little while. Some of these inventories, Heather, I don't know how John is, but right, Liz is always a little cautious because she's like, you know things, and you're gonna make me think I'm crazy. And I'm like, honey, it doesn't work that way. Like,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
this is the outcome. It is what it is. I'm not going to tell you and lead you down some crazy direction. So it took
Mhm.
her a little while to kind of trust me to know that okay, this is safe, and I'm not going to turn this on you. But when she
Absolutely.
Strength Finders, it really opened her eyes too to and gave her this confidence, right? She knew that she was responsible, and she knew that she was an achiever, and she knew those were definitely consistency, were definitely some strengths of hers, but it gave me that tangible kind of meat and potatoes where I could go, okay, these are how I can really build her up. Why am I worried about getting this vision across the finish line when she's responsible? I turn the project over to her and she can make it happen. And we had a very recent example of that when we talk about wabi sabi. If you come to our retreats, you're going to hear more about that and the Japanese art that goes into that and the thought process. And Liz and I had a defining moment when we were creating that kind of vision for our retreats. And it
And
was
I was there. I witnessed it. It was awesome. And I saw like the conflict and also the coolness of knowing your strengths
yes,
work itself out for both of you.
because like a lot of men out there, I'm like, okay, well, didn't work, cut our losses, let's move on.
Yeah.
And especially if you throw in the pieces of what I know about my strength, right? Competition, right? Well, we have to get this done. This
Yeah.
is
We have
not
to.
helping us get this done, so we're done.
Yeah.
And I also have in my top 10 self-assured. And so I'm confident that there'll be another solution out there. Well, Liz is not wired like that, right? I gave her a task and she was going to make sure
He was going
that
to execute.
exactly it got done. She didn't feel like she was ready to let go. I didn't necessarily respect that decision of hers either. And so we
At
had to,
first. At
at first,
first.
right, we had to figure that out. So, it was a moment for us where I prayed about it. I'm like, okay, God, I know my heart's not right. It's just trying to be the corporate bully, I guess, and it's not working, right? She's not
Well,
an employee of mine. She's my wife. And God just said, get out of the way and let her.
yeah.
And so I did, and it worked out.
Well, and there was pressure, there was timing, it was happening, all these things. So you have to kind of step back and see, why am I triggered? Why am I moving in like a bulldozer to do this? And yet Liz dug deep and she wasn't moving. She was going to figure out that doggone wasabi bowl. And the funniest thing, and I've got to tell you, after you walked away and we knew that you were done with us and her, and we knew it was good, it wasn't bad, but it was just like you had other things you had to get done. That was your pressure. And so as you went off to do that, Liz and I just wanted to, like, I'm the relational person. So I'm just like, girl, I will not get in your business, but I'm going to be right here. I'm going to be right here. You got the support, the
Yeah.
relation. But guess what happened? Her fingers stuck together because we were trying all this different epoxy. What's going to work on pottery? What kind of Gorilla Glue? What kind of epoxy? Super glue. Her fingers stuck together and they were not unlocking. And so all of us, that is just our main strengths, that middle ground of growth that we have to navigate. And then those areas where our pride, our stubbornness gets every one of us every time. I hope that this conversation has spurred you guys on to be like, it's been a while, or maybe you've never taken this type of an assessment. And like we say, your identity is not in this assessment, but there will unlock knowledge that will hopefully give you some wisdom to navigate your marriage and your relationship.
I'm thrilled that, again, you have taken this time. We know your busy schedules, busy lives. We hope that we've been able to pour something into your life. There are many, many assessments out there that can help your marriage grow and be stronger. This is just one of them. If you'd like to learn more and know more about what the Marriage Architects has to offer, feel free to head to our website, themarriagearchitects.co. Reach out to Heather or myself, and we'll be happy to have a conversation with you how you can have a stronger marriage. This assessment we would probably recommend everybody take and bring it into your marriage in a healthy way. We can absolutely help you do that. But like I said, there are many, many other tools out there. So again, thank you for your time. We appreciate each and every one of you, and we hope that you found something today that will be beneficial.
Thanks for joining us at Foundations. Remember to take our quiz for your free marriage blueprint by clicking the link in the show notes. You can also check out our website at foundationsquiz.com.